Hey folks, welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to take some time to kind of share my thoughts on choosing a deck to finish out the Phantasmal Flames format and kind of where the meta's at right now. This video is geared towards the Toronto regional, but if you're planning on playing in any other regionals or even any challenges or cups for the rest of the format until Ascended Heroes comes out, this video is going to be great for you as well. So go ahead and stick around and you're going to learn a lot. My name is Jared. I'll be your gameplay nurse today. And let's just jump straight into it by looking at the meta percentages from the most recent Phantasmal Flames regional, which was over in Stuttgart. We, of course, had Golden Go EX at 17% of the meta, and this is not likely to change in any significant way. A lot of top players are kind of glazing Golden Go EX as the best deck in format right now, so this is kind of the guy to beat. You must have an answer for Golden Go EX. I think it is going to be, it could possibly be even a higher percentage meta share at the Toronto regionals, approaching that 20% mark. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened at all. So Golden Go EX is definitely your first consideration when deciding what deck to play into your rest of the Phantasmal Flames format. You have to have an answer to Golden Go EX. That is non-negotiable. You have to have some kind of game plan going into them. And then the second deck that I think is also non-negotiable is, of course, Gardevoir EX, which both versions combined, Jellicent and regular Gardevoir, had about 13% meta share over in Stuttgart. I would expect for Toronto a lot more of the leaning kind of away from the Jellicent Gardevoir. I think Jellicent is still very, very strong, and you'll likely still see some Frillishes in most of their builds, but I think as far as going into it, I would expect to see less Jellicent and more things like Lux Cape, more Bravery Charms, and then having maybe just a one of Frillish as an item lock for Golden Go, and more of a plan going that way. So that's my expectation for what the majority of Gardevoir decks will be for the Toronto regionals and for the rest of Phantasmal Flames. But this is another, like I was saying, non-negotiable. This is, look, right here, just these two decks, that's 30% of the meta. You have to have an answer for both of these decks, or at least a solid game plan into them, or you're going to have a bad time. The chances of you not pairing into one of these two decks multiple times throughout a tournament is very low. So you really need to have a game plan going into Golden Go and Gardevoir. Now for the rest of the meta, over at Stuttgart, we saw Dragapult at 12%, Charizard at 10%, and then we'll talk about Mega Kangaskhan here in a second. But starting with Dragapult, 12% I think is going to be pretty fair. I think the power Dragapult is definitely going down, and people are starting to realize that a bit. But American players love Dragapult. I don't think they're going to be ready to give them up just yet. North American players, I should say. It is a Canadian regional. North American players love Dragapult EX. I think 12% is probably a fair estimate as far as what the meta percentage will be at Toronto. Charizard EX at 10% for Stuttgart. I could see that going up a little bit, I think, but not by much. Maybe it'll just join Dragapult around that 12% range. At Stuttgart, we saw, of course, the Donzard build do very well. I have seen that anecdotally. I have seen that kind of terrorizing my local scene quite a bit. So I would expect people to be pretty excited to run that version of the deck over to the Toronto regionals. And then the Mega Kangaskhan Absol box. Let's see, the Absol box was around 5% at Stuttgart, with Mega Kangaskhan being just 1.5%. I expect Absol box to go down and the straight more Mega Kangaskhan with the Bouffalance deck to go up. That deck has been kind of picking up speed as of late, and I would expect it to be run in higher percentages over at the Toronto regionals. So make sure you at least have it on your radar. You don't necessarily need like a hard counter into any of these decks, but you should definitely have a solid game plan going into any of these three. That will definitely help you out quite a bit. Now, popular tech cards that we're seeing in the current meta. We are seeing a steady increase in Team Rocket's Watchtower, one to answer Charizard, shutting down the Pidgeots, and then in the Dawn version of the build, shutting down the Noctiles as well is pretty powerful stuff. But it also shuts down the Mega Kangaskhan deck, turning off the Bouffalant's defensive ability, turning off the draw power from the Mega Kangaskhan. So a lot of players are kind of shoehorning the Team Rocket's Watchtower into their decks. So if you are running a deck with colorless Pokemon whose abilities you would like to use, you should probably have at least an idea of how to play around that, if that's including an extra stadium bump in your card, or just preloading energy onto your Pidgeot EX so that you can blustery wind it away. Just make sure you have that in mind as something that you will probably see more frequently than you're used to going into the rest of Phantasmal Flames. And then the other thing that we're seeing kind of increase in popularity right now is shoehorning a Mega Lopunny EX into a lot of different decks. We've seen it. It is a very just efficient attacker. Getting a stage 1 that can hit for 230 with any energy is pretty crazy. And then Spiky Hopper being kind of the icing on the cake, being able to deal with things like Cornerstone or Crustle. To do 160 for just 2 of color, like any energy, is honestly very good. On top of its 330 HP pool, makes it kind of a no-brainer inclusion into a ton of different decks right now. Golden Go started playing it. I've seen it pop up in Zoroark builds. People have even been talking about Charizard and Dragapult builds with the Mega Lopunny. It's just all around a very strong card. So there might be situations where you're not expecting to have to hit 330, and then all of a sudden a Mega Lopunny hits the field, and now you have to figure out a way to deal with that. So something to consider. And then because of all of the Mega Lopunny that's running around right now, Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon has kind of fallen off as far as inclusions for people's decks. So things like the Mega Kangaskhan are running maybe like some more Eerie cards to try to deal with Golden Go, or they're running a Crustle line. Right now, I would expect to see less Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. So if you want to get a little bit greedier with your list and cut your answers into that, it's honestly not a bad call. But of course, do with that advice what you will. I'm not saying that there's going to be 0 Cornerstone, but I am saying there's going to be a lot less than there has been. So chances of you getting bodied by a Cornerstone are never going to be 0. But that's about what you can expect as far as how the meta has evolved from Stuttgart to now. So let's jump into the 5 decks that I would consider running if I were going to the Toronto Regionals, or if I was playing in any major events going into the rest of Phantasmal Flames. So if you're still undecided on what to run, stay tuned. We got some great ideas for you. Coming at you with deck number 5 is that Mega Kangaskhan Crustle list that I was talking about. I think this is a pretty solid kind of anti-meta sort of build. Like I was saying, the Crustle is going to be a better shout than the Cornerstone Ogerpon right now, especially with the one of Lux Cape gives it 250 health. People's biggest answer to it right now is that Lopunny, but they're hitting you for 160. And then you can heal 80 damage. And then you've got a couple Monkey Dory on the bench so you can get rid of some of the rest of it. So you're still going to be able to survive quite a few hits from a Mega Lopunny EX. It's not going to be just the immediate answer that I think a lot of people are hoping it is. So you're still going to be able to do quite well with all of that. And then into everything else, you of course have the Mega Kangaskhan with the Bouffalant preventing 60 damage from attacks to it. And then just swing in for that 200 plus however many heads you hit every single turn. Still having the Monkey Dories, still having the Jumbo Ice Creams to heal it off of. This deck is fairly straightforward, fairly beginner friendly. Choosing when to use Crustle will probably be your biggest challenge in the deck, as well as maintaining a board state that isn't going to give them the win despite having a Crustle up where they can just gust around it and take all 6 prize cards by just using Gust. Will be kind of the other puzzle that you have to solve, but it is a pretty straightforward deck. A lot of people are having some good success on it right now. I don't think this deck will be winning the Toronto Regionals, but I expect to see a decent amount of them in day 2. And if you have fun with this sort of tanky healing archetype, then you will be having a good time over in the old Toronto Regionals. So we covered its answer to Golden Go with the Crustle line, of course. That's going to be your main game plan into them. Into Gardevoir, if you wanted to shore up that, you could find a card to cut to add in a Shaman even, I think would do pretty well, because their main plan is going to be Screamtail, sniping down your Monkey Dories, maybe even a Bouffalont, and then Ionoing you low before taking out likely the Mega Kangaskhan for your last 3 prize cards. So a Shaman would do well to sort of interrupt that plan a little bit. So if you want to be a little bit stronger into Gardevoir, I would definitely consider including that. Coming at you with number 4 is old reliable Dragapult Dusknoir with honestly not a lot of changes at all. This list is very similar to what I ran in Vegas. This was the highest placing list in Stuttgart. Not a lot new happening for Dragapult Dusknoir as of late. I still don't think Dawn is a super good inclusion, but your mileage may vary. This deck right now, I think will do just okay. I think that if people were more invested into that Henry Chow style of Gardevoir with the 2/1/2 Guardy line and the Jellicent, I think this deck actually does really well into that line. But like I was saying in the intro, I believe people are shifting over to more of the Turbo Gardevoir with the TM Evos and the Charms and Lux Capes and what have you, which unfortunately Dragapult Dusknoir struggles into quite a bit. So if I'm right about that, then I think Dragapult Dusknoir will do just okay at Toronto Regionals. If I'm wrong, and a lot of people are on Chow's aggressive 2/1/2 Jellicent list, then I think Dragapult Dusknoir will actually be a pretty fine play for the Toronto Regionals. So it depends on how you want to feel that out. The other problem to Dragapult Dusknoir right now is that its Golden Go matchup is kind of just okay. It is maybe 50-50 at best. Favored into Golden Go maybe a bit more realistically, I would say. There is still quite a few lines that you can take into them. Make sure that what I was doing in Vegas is I was making sure that I had a way to kind of chain Badoos back to back without burning through my energy. So that would be either getting a Latias into play or just benching 2 Badoos right at the start so that I can again retreat. Once one Badoo is knocked out, I can get the next one into the active without burning through my important resource so that I can get into Phantom Dives sooner than later. And you'll notice that as if you're able to kind of successfully chain item lock them in the early game, there's going to be some kind of weakness on their board, whether they weren't able to get enough gimme goals set up, maybe they weren't even able to get into their draw engine, only getting one of the Lunatone, not a Soul Rock down. Something's going to be missing if you're able to successfully item lock them, unless they just had it like that, in which case, oops, oh well. But in most cases, something's going to be missing, something's going to be exploitable, so just exploit that, and that's going to be your best chance of success. Look to clear out their attacking lineup with using your Dusknoir, Dusclops, and a Phantom Dive, hopefully. And then always remember to kind of prepare damage so that you can close out games with Blood Moon or Ursaluna. That's going to be your best line into Golden Go there. Or an alternate version of Dragapult, I would consider Pulsard. I think it's in a great spot right now. Nothing too crazy about it at the moment. We've got the Hawlucha in here now. Chiyu is great into Golden Go, and then the Jamming Tower is good both into Golden Go and Gardevoir right now. Can shut off Golden Go's Air Balloon, shut off Gardevoir's Bravery Charms. Both very strong. Charizard, of course, a great attacker into both of those decks as well. Once Golden Go has taken 3 prizes, Charizard is knocking them out in one hit. And then same with the Gardevoir, except always knocking them out with 1 hit. You've got 3 boss so that you can chase down the Gardevoirs pretty effectively. And then for the A-Spec here, Unfair Stamp is very, very strong, especially when you pair it with a Badoo. So if they're a setup deck that relies on items, you just Itchy Pollen them. If they knock the Badoo out, you Unfair Stamp them down to 2 cards. Now, not only are they behind in setup because they've been item locked, but they only have a 2-card hand to work from. So pretty powerful stuff there. You can TM Evo into the faster decks that aren't going to care as much about item lock, so you have that option as well. Both kind of work pretty great. But yeah, I would definitely consider Pulsard. This probably would have been... I honestly think I would have run Pulsard over Dragapult Dusknoir going into my next event. but I honestly haven't had enough time to test it out to make that gut call 100%. So if you're considering it, run a bunch of games, try a bunch of matchups, see what works for you. Coming at you with number 3 is Charizard. Now, I wanted to show off the Donzard build that, of course, won the Regional Stuttgart tournament because I think this build is honestly just so much fun to play. Going through your Jewel Seeker to hit all your combos is just such a huge blast of dopamine. I ran this deck pretty aggressively after the regionals came out. I ended up winning a cup, I think a challenge or two with it as well. It's super fun. This deck absolutely rips when you can get going. It does, however, struggle quite a bit into item lock. So if you pair into a Dragapult that's able to chain Badoos or a Gardevoir that's able to just Frillish spam you, you're gonna have potentially a bit of a tough time. You do have Fanrotom or Terapagos as an early game attacker that you can kind of use to answer those challenges, but that's not always going to be possible. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. But I think this deck is going to be very popular going into the next couple of events. For Golden Go, it's pretty easy to just go 1, 2, 3 into them utilizing the Briar on the prize race. And then for Gardevoir, we've got the Prime Catcher and the 2 Boss to kind of effectively chase down their Gardevoirs. And then Terapagos is a super great attacker into them in the early game because it can knock out the Frillishes. Just a very, very successful deck into both of the top boys in the meta right now. The other option for Charizard right now is to take out the Terapagos and Noctowl engine for a few more consistency and tech cards. This is what Oyvind ran and did very well with in Stuttgart. You can see that it has a couple answers to item lock with things like Mezagoza, the Defiance Band to be able to hit just that much harder to you, great into Golden Go. And then the Secret Box is just a fantastic card for getting set up or for seeing in the late game to grab those combo pieces that you need to kind of close things out. Of course, able to capitalize on Briar as well to regain ground in the prize race at the end of the game. Overall, just a very, very solid deck. And I think Charizard's going to do quite well for the remainder of Phantasmal Flames. In the number 2 slot is, of course, Gardevoir. First, I want to show off the aggressive Jellicent line that I was talking about, popularized by Henry Chow, of course, with the 2-1-2 Routes Gardevoir line. And then having either a 2-2 Jellicent or just a 2-1. I could see really either way kind of popping off, but I don't expect this to be the most popular list of Gardevoir. However, you should still have it on your radar because I think it still will be around quite a bit. This list relies heavily on rare candy to get into Gardevoir. No TM Evos here, so they're just kind of hoping to reset their hands with Elite's Determination in order to see the Earthen Vessels, rare candies, Ultra Balls that they need in order to dump energy and then get into Gardevoir, all the while item locking you with Frillish and Jellicent is kind of the main game plan. So Boss's Orders is quite effective into this deck so that you can get around the item lock if needed in order to finish setting up or be able to get your deck to where it needs to be. Into Golden Go, the main line is through that item lock. You're looking to Oceanic Gloom them almost the entire game and then take prizes that way. Although this list did not run the TM Devolution, but I think that I would expect to see that in lists going forward. Probably cutting a Bravery Charm for a TM Devo so that you can Oceanic Gloom while spreading energy through Adrenabrain and doing the classic Frillish Shuffle, where your Frillish has a 3 retreat cost, which is incredibly good for Gardevoir because you can load 3 energies onto it, stack up a bunch of damage, retreat into the next Frillish, Monkey Dory all that damage over, and build up for a TM Devo play pretty quickly that way. But this is going to be, I think, a more realistic expectation of the Gardevoir list that you're more likely to hit going into Toronto and the rest of the format. With the exception of Fluttermane here, I think this could be hit or miss in a lot of lists. We might see like a Diancie instead. But the kind of newer thing is having a 1 of Lux Cape to slap onto Screamtail as a way to kind of have a big attack to close out games. giving Screamtail that 190 HP. It can now be stacked up to 180 damage. And then that's 360 right there onto anything in play. That's kind of crazy. Get prepared for a big Screamtail to close out games. Your support Pokemon might not be as safe as you think they are. And then these lists will typically have 1 or 2 TM evolutions, 2 rare candies, so multiple ways to get into Kirlias and Gardevoirs outside of item lock. So quite a bit more consistent. And then these decks just have a lot of answers into just about everything in the format. It is actually kind of wackadoo how strong they can be. A lot of times they'll still rely on Frillish to help with the Golden Go matchup. If you can get to a point where maybe the Golden Go player got a little bit too aggressive a little too early into the game, dumped a ton of energy to knock out a Gardevoir, you can just start Oceanic Glooming them, and then they aren't able to re-access that energy with Superior Energy Retrieval, and you can just close out the game with Oceanic Gloom, maybe making a devolution play after a few turns of that. And of course, as I alluded to at the start of the video, Golden Go is expected to be the top dog going into the tournament. If you have not locked in a deck yet and you're not really feeling comfortable on anything, start spamming games with Golden Go right now. This deck is going to be the easiest for you to pick up, and it's going to be the most successful with the least amount of time put into the deck. That's not to say that it's a super simple deck to play, but it is a bit more straightforward than some of the other ones, and you will have the most success if you are yet decided on a deck. Borrow some Golden Go EX from a friend if you don't have any, and just start spamming the heck out of this deck. You'll do the best that way. There's a few different ways people are running the deck right now. I think Mega Lopunny is going to be the most popular secondary attacker at the moment. We did see a few Mega Mawile as well. They'll still be on the lookout for that. The Hops Cramorant is floating around here and there as a way to maintain a 1 prize board. It's great into the mirror, as well as some of those peskier decks like Alakazam or Ethan's Typhlosion. It gives you a more helpful way to play into them as well, while not giving up 2 prize attackers into your opponent's 1 prize board state. If you don't want to play the Hops Cramorant, another good tech card is the Lana's Aid as a way to get energy back from your discard that is not an item card. It's great into dealing with things like Gardevoir or Dragapult. I think the Picnic Basket's really great in the deck. I wouldn't cut that. The Double Turo is, of course, amazing. And then there's 8 fighting energy for your draw engine, 3 metal for your Golden Go's attack. I think that's a perfect count. I wouldn't mess with that at all. Prime Catcher could potentially be a secret box, but I think honestly, whatever one you're feeling better with is a good shout. But that's my take on what decks are powerful, what decks I would consider choosing going into the rest of the Phantasmal Flames format. As always, I do recommend sticking with a deck that you are the most comfortable with going into a regional. They are long, grueling days, and you will need to rely on a lot of muscle memory to sort of power through them. But make sure the deck that you're comfortable with, like I said, has an answer into Golden Go and Gardevoir. I think your enjoyment throughout the day will increase dramatically the better you do into both of those decks. But if you have any questions, if I didn't cover the deck that you're thinking about running and you want my opinion, go ahead and ask down in the comments below. Love to chat with you guys down there. But my name's Jared. I've been your gameplay nurse today. Thanks for being around, everyone.